O Mother Nui, stretch high above this valley. Your starry body is our glory. Then see the hawk of yonder Ahurquit, his fiery splendor, oh so mighty. He brings a light for all our weary souls. He makes the broken spirit whole.
If I told you that the Nobel Prize-winning poet W.B. Yeats once called the police to defend a magical vault from a hostile takeover by Aleister Crowley, you'd probably think I was pitching a fantasy movie, right?
Oh, absolutely. It sounds completely made up.
But it's real. Today we're taking a deep dive into Felix John Taylor's 2026 book, The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. We want to figure out how this secretive Victorian occult society was, well, actually more like an avant-garde arts club. One that secretly shapes modern pop culture.
Yeah, and they were highly influential.
Okay, let's unpack this. Instead of some dogmatic, spooky cult, Taylor argues this group was basically a 19th century progressive writer's room, like a creative masterclass where men and women were absolute equals, which was wild for the time. They were rebelling against a Victorian society that only cared about cold, hard scientific facts.
Right, and the foundation of that rebellion started with a very calculated origin story. So back in 1887, a London coroner named William Wynne Westcott used a 16th century cryptography text to decode this mysterious 60-folio cipher.
A coroner decoding magical ciphers. That is so Victorian.
Exactly. And that code supposedly led him to a mysterious German correspondent named Fräulein Anna Sprengel. She then allegedly authorized Westcott to establish the English branch of the order.
Wait, supposedly?
Yeah.
So they were essentially just fabricating an ancient pedigree to give their progressive arts club some immediate authority.
Oh, completely. It is a classic strategy, to manufacture historical legitimacy. But what's fascinating here is Taylor's core thesis about what they actually did once the doors were closed.
Right, because it wasn't a typical religion.
No, not at all. These prominent poets, novelists, and actors, they didn't join to worship a specific deity. They viewed ceremonial magic as a highly rigorous framework for the human imagination.
Okay, I have to push back on that, though. Because if you just have a bunch of avant-garde artists and poets doing rituals in a room together, wasn't this basically just glorified acting exercises? I mean, like a Victorian improv troupe?
It sounds like it, yeah. But it goes much deeper than standard acting because of the psychological mechanisms involved. For members like the London actress Florence Farr, the theatrical techniques actually were the magic.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, Farr didn't just speak loudly. She used intense vocal projections and the physical vibration of specific words to essentially hack her own nervous system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, by sustaining these resonant frequencies and combining them with intense visualizations, they created a sensory overload. This deliberately bypassed their rational minds to induce deeply altered psychological states.
That is wild. But if this magic was entirely internal and psychological, why did they need a physical vault to fight over? Because you mentioned Yeats calling the cops on Crowley earlier.
Well, because the physical space was the laboratory where this intense psychological curriculum was practiced. And, artists have egos. The tension over who controlled that laboratory boiled over during the 1900 Battle of Blythe Road.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
It does. The Order's founder, Mathers, had grown incredibly paranoid while living in Paris. He ended up sending a young, power-hungry Aleister Crowley to London to physically seize control of the vault and basically shut Yeats out.
So it wasn't really a battle over magical artifacts. It was essentially a hostile corporate takeover, but with magic wands. You have Yeats trying to protect this open-source artistic curriculum and Crowley trying to privatize the whole thing for his own personal power.
That is a very accurate way to look at it, actually. Yeats wanted to preserve the collaborative project, while Crowley sought absolute dominance. And right after this internal fracture, the Order suffered a devastating external blow.
The 1901 Horus scandal, right? Taylor talks about how con artists stole the rituals. But how did that destroy the entire order?
Because the con artists didn't just steal words, unfortunately. They hijacked the psychological mechanisms of those rituals, the induced trust and the altered mental states we talked about.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
Yeah, they used them to manipulate victims and commit severe sex crimes. So when the perpetrators were caught, the global press falsely associated these horrific abuses with the genuine order, publicly destroying its reputation practically overnight.
Man, So the formal organization just collapses under the weight of the scandal. But I've heard rumors, like I think in that recent Apple TV documentary, that writers like Bram Stoker and H.P. Lovecraft were secretly in the group, keeping it alive. Were they the ones carrying the torch?
No, Taylor's research strictly debunks that. It is a complete media fabrication. There is zero historical evidence linking those authors to the order.
Wait, really? None at all.
None. Stoker and Lovecraft were writing genre fiction. They used monsters and spells just for dramatic effect. That is completely separate from the rigorous psychological lifestyle practiced by people like Yeats or Farr. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the actual survival of the Order's ideas was much subtler.
Subtler how?
Well, it evolved. It gave birth to Dion Fortune's work in the 1930s. She wrote these metaphysical thrillers that wrapped heavy psychoanalytic concepts into accessible, suspenseful stories.
Oh, that is so cool.
It also directly produced the Universal Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot deck, and it provided the foundational, beta-tested structure for modern Wicca.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, it means every time you see a tarot deck at a bookstore or read a psychological fantasy novel, you're looking at the direct, undeniable fingerprints of this Victorian arts club.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a critical question to consider. The Golden Dawn utilized the occult to rebel against the spiritually empty, measure-everything mindset of the 19th century.
Right.
When we look at our modern cultural obsession with practices like manifestation and tarot today, what does that say about what we feel is fundamentally missing in our own hyper-rational digital world?